Okay, so let's unpack this. I want you to imagine a scale. On one side, you have a disease, and specifically, we were talking about cancer that has traveled to the brain.
Right. Heavy, heavy stuff.
Yeah, incredibly scary. And on the other side of that scale, you have the treatment. For a really long time, I think the assumption in medicine has been pretty simple. The heavier the disease, the heavier the treatment needs to be.
Yeah, that is the classic scorched earth policy. If the enemy is everywhere, you just, bomb the whole territory. It makes intuitive sense.
It does. But today, we are looking at a study that challenges that fundamental assumption. It asks a really difficult and honestly a very human question. What happens when the treatment becomes heavier than the disease itself?
And that is the core dilemma we're looking at today. We are diving into a major phase 3 randomized clinical trial. This is really fresh data. The data collection ran from 2017 all the way to 2024.
Well, so just wrapping up.
Exactly. It involves 4 major U.S. medical centers, and it tackles a very specific gray area in oncology that has honestly stumped doctors for years.
And when you say gray area, you aren't talking about something rare, right? I mean, we're talking about patients who don't just have one brain tumor, but a whole lot of them.
Correct. The specific focus of this deep dive is on patients with 5 to 20 brain metastases.
Which just sounds like a terrifying number.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission today is to look at the two very different contenders for treating this. We have what we'll call the sniper approach, which is stereotactic radiation.
Right.
And we have the net approach, which is whole brain radiation.
But a very specific modern version of the net.
Right. We will get into that. And for you listening, this isn't just about the medical mechanics. This is really a story about how we define success in medicine. Is success a completely clean MRI scan? Or is success being able to get out of bed and recognize your family? Because as we'll see today, those two things don't always go hand in hand.
They really don't. The shift from just attacking the disease to actively protecting the patient is huge. And the results of this trial are likely going to change how cancer is treated worldwide.
So let's set the stage here. I want to start with the patients. Because 5 to 20 metastases is a clinical term.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like for a person?
It's a significant burden. To give you some context, historically, if a patient had 1 or 2, maybe 3 spots in the brain, the choice was easy. You use stereotactic radiation.
The sniper.
Exactly. You map the coordinates, you hit those 3 specific spots with high-dose radiation, and you leave the rest of the brain completely alone. It's precise, it preserves healthy tissue, and the side effects are usually minimal because you are missing the normal brain.
Okay, so 1 to 3 is sniper territory. But what if a patient came in with, say, 50 tumors?
You can't snipe 50 targets. Well, historically, you couldn't. You would be there for days, and it just wasn't feasible. So you use whole brain radiation, you treat the entire intracranial volume, you essentially cast a massive net to catch the 50 tumors you see, plus the microscopic ones that you don't see yet.
Right, so 1 to 3 is the sniper, 50 plus is the net. But this study is looking at the tricky middle ground, the 5 to 20 range.
The battleground. For a long time, the conventional wisdom was that once you hit 5 or 10 tumors, treating the whole brain was safer because it prevents new tumors from popping up. It is what we call a sanctuary treatment.
Sanctuary treatment.
Yeah. You are trying to sterilize the entire area. You treat everything just in case.
But treating the whole brain has to come with a massive downside, doesn't it? I mean, I've heard absolute horror stories about cognitive decline after whole brain radiation.
It is a very, very real concern. We are talking about severe memory loss, difficulty processing information, and just profound fatigue. It's not just about, forgetting where you put your keys. It is about losing the executive function that lets you navigate your day.
That's devastating.
It is. So to combat this, engineers and physicists developed a new technique, and this is the one used in the study. It's called hippocampal avoidance, whole brain radiation, or HAWBRT.
Okay, let's unpack that acronym.
Yep.
The hippocampus is the memory center, right?
It is. It's the factory for new memories. It houses vital neural stem cells. If you radiate the hippocampus, you severely impair the patient's ability to form new memories. So HAWBRT is essentially a smart net.
A smart net, I like that.
Yeah, it radiates the whole brain, but uses advanced software and beam shaping to specifically block the radiation from hitting that central memory core. It builds a shield around the hippocampus.
So on paper, at least, this sounds like the perfect compromise. You kill all the cancer everywhere in the brain, the stuff you see and the stuff you don't, but you shield the memory. best of both worlds.
That was the hypothesis. That was the control arm of this study. They really wanted to prove that the SmartNet was superior, or at least equal to just sniping the individual tumors. They wanted to see if the technological workaround of shielding the hippocampus finally solved that quality of life problem.
Okay, so let's get into the actual study design. Who are the people in this trial?
They enrolled 196 randomized patients. The mean age was 61, and about 66% were female. But here is the number that really defines the stakes for me. The median number of metastases was 14.
Whoa, wait, so median means half the people had more than 14 tumors.
Yes, half had more. And the range went all the way up to 20, with some patients even slightly pushing that boundary during the screening phase. These were not patients with light disease. Their brains were literally under siege.
I think that is a really important thing to visualize. Imagine being a doctor, looking at a scan and seeing 14, 15, 18 distinct spots scattered across someone's brain. The instinct to say we need to treat the whole thing must be incredibly strong.
Oh, it is. It feels so much safer. You constantly worry about what you are missing. If you only snipe the 15 spots,
Right.
you see, what about number 16 that is currently microscopic? The whole brain approach handles that. The sniper approach ignores it. That is the fundamental tension of this whole trial.
Okay, so the setup is 196 people. Half get the SmartNet, which is the whole brain with the memory shielding. Half get the sniper, just targeting the individual spots. What exactly were they measuring? Was it overall survival?
No, and this is a critical distinction. In this stage of cancer, stage 4 survival is usually dictated by what the cancer is doing in the rest of the body. You know, the lungs, the liver, the bones. The brain treatment rarely changes how long they live, but it drastically changes how they live.
So they were measuring quality of life.
Exactly. They use something called the MD Anderson Symptom Inventory Brain Tumor Instrument.
That is quite a mouthful.
It is, but it's an absolutely brilliant tool. It is a patient-reported outcome, meaning the doctors don't fill it out, the patients do.
Which centers their actual experience.
Right. It's a questionnaire on a 0 to 10 scale. It asks about symptoms, sure, but more importantly, it asks about interference. Does your pain interfere with your walking? Does your fatigue interfere with your enjoyment of life? Does your mood interfere with your relationships?
I love that. It's not about how big the tumor is in millimeters. It's about, can you play with your grandkids? Can you make yourself breakfast?
Precisely. And they set a very specific bar. They determined that a change of roughly 1 point on this scale was clinically meaningful, which means if the score shifts by a point, the patient actually feels it. It's the difference between having a good day and a bad day. The specific threshold they used was 0.98.
Okay, so the bets are on. 5 to 20 tumors. Does the SmartNet win because it stops new tumors from growing? Or does the sniper win because it spares all that healthy tissue?
The results were stark.
Don't leave us hanging.
The sniper won, and honestly, it wasn't even a photo finish.
Really? Even up to 20 tumors?
Even then, let's look at the actual scores. Over the 6-month follow-up, the patients who got the sniper treatment, the stereotactic radiation, actually saw their interference scores improve. They dropped from 2.69 down to 2.37, a change of negative 0.32.
Like they got better.
Yeah.
They have advanced brain cancer, they got radiation to the brain, and they felt better than when they started.
A little bit, yes. You have to remember those tumors are causing pressure in the skull. They cause headaches, maybe nausea, neurological deficits. The radiation shrinks them. So if you shrink the tumor without adding a heavy, heavy burden of side effects, the patient actually feels relief.
That makes total sense. And what about the net group? The SmartNet with the memory shield?
Their scores went up. They got worse. It rose from 2.29 to 3.03, an increase of 0.74 points.
So they ended up functioning significantly worse than when they walked in the door.
They did. When you compare the two groups, the mean difference was negative 1.06. Remember, 0.98 was the threshold for clinically meaningful. They blew past that. Statistically, the p-value was less than 0.001. This was not a random chance or a statistical blip.
That is just fascinating. So, despite the hippocampal avoidance, despite the really fancy shielding over the memory center radiating, the rest of the brain still crushed their quality of life compared to the sniper approach.
It did, and we really need to talk about why. Because there is a very specific villain in this story.
I assume it wasn't memory loss, right? Since they shielded the memory center.
Right. Memory was actually preserved reasonably well in both groups. The true villain was fatigue.
Fatigue.
And we aren't talking about I need a nap on Sunday afternoon fatigue. We are talking about grade 3 fatigue, debilitating exhaustion where you literally cannot perform basic self-care. It's a systemic, crushing lack of energy.
What were the actual numbers on the fatigue?
In the sniper group, about 28% of patients reported grade 1 to 3 fatigue.
Which is still high. I mean, cancer is exhausting and treatment is exhausting.
It is, but in the whole brain group, it was 44%, nearly half the patients.
Wow, so it was almost a coin flip. If you get the net approach, you have nearly a 50-50 shot of being completely wiped out.
And think about the biology here. Even if you shield the hippocampus when you do whole brain radiation, you are still passing high-energy radiation beams through the frontal lobes, the parietal lobes, all the white matter tracts connecting everything. You are inducing profound inflammation across the entire organ. That takes a massive metabolic toll on the body.
It's like the difference between a surgical strike and a localized earthquake. The earthquake shakes everything.
Yeah.
Even if you heavily protect the town hall, which is the hippocampus, the rest of the city is still shaking and taking damage.
That is a very accurate analogy. The brain is an incredibly interconnected network. You can't irradiate 95% of it and expect the patient to feel like they just had a haircut. And here is the darkest but perhaps the most important statistic from the entire trial. Only 83 patients completed the 6-month assessment. That is only 42%.
Wait, why?
Because they died. Or their disease progressed to the point where they became too sick to even fill out a simple 0 to 10 form.
Wow. That really puts it in perspective, the severity of what we are dealing with here.
It changes the stakes completely. If a patient only has 6 months left to live, do you really want them to spend 3 of those months recovering from the debilitating fatigue of whole brain radiation?
Absolutely not. You want those 6 months to be as good as possible. You want them present with their families.
Exactly. The SmartNet might technically prevent a new microscopic tumor from popping up in month 5, but if the patient spent months 1 through 4 too tired to even leave their bedroom, was it worth it? The study resoundingly says no. The trade-off is just not worth it.
It's a massive trade-off. You are essentially trading potential tumor control for actual patient control over their daily life.
Well, and here's the kicker. Did the sniper approach actually lose control of the tumors? This is the big medical question the skeptics had. Did the patients who got the sniper treatment end up with brains full of new tumors immediately?
Yeah, that's the big fear, right? That you play a game of whack-a-mole. You hit 5 tumors here and then 5 more just pop up over there.
So they did have more distant failures. That means new tumors popping up in new spots. That happened more often in the sniper group because they obviously didn't treat the whole brain.
Okay, so the doctor's fear was valid. The microscopic ones did grow.
Technically, yes, but, and this is the big but that has changed in practice worldwide, they just treated those new spots with another round of sniper radiation.
Oh, so reactive precision management.
Exactly. It is a total shift in philosophy. Instead of treat everything right now, just in case it is treat what we see now. If something new appears, we will treat that then. And the data from this trial proves that this reactive approach results in a significantly better daily life for the patient than the preventative blanket approach.
It is amazing that the technology even allows this now. I imagine 10 or 15 years ago treating 20 spots and then coming back 3 months later to treat 5 more.
Yeah.
That just wasn't possible.
It was a logistical nightmare. The patient would have to be bolted into a rigid metal frame for hours. It was physically painful. It was claustrophobic. But now, with modern linear accelerators, the massive machines that deliver the beams and automated AI planning software, you can treat 15 or 20 metastases in 20 or 30 minutes.
30 minutes for 20 tumors.
Sometimes even less. It is a frameless, mask-based system now. It's an outpatient procedure. You go in, you get zapped, you go home and have lunch. Compare that to whole brain radiation, which usually requires 10 daily sessions. That is 2 weeks of going to the hospital every single day.
So the sniper is faster, it's fewer hospital visits, it causes less fatigue, and it results in a better quality of life. I mean, it just seems like an absolute slam dunk.
In this specific population, yes. For 5 to 20 metastases, it is. This trial essentially validates that we can push the limit of stereotactic radiation much, much further than we ever thought safe or practical.
I do want to push back on one thing, though, just to be totally thorough here. Is there any case where the net is still better? What if someone has 50 tumors or 100?
It's a great question. At a certain point, the physics simply catch up with you. If you have 50 targets, the amount of low-dose radiation leakage between all those individual shots starts to overlap. You are shooting so many beams from so many angles that the healthy space between the tumors starts getting a high dose anyway.
Oh, I see. It just blurs together into a whole brain treatment anyway.
Exactly. So yes, for massive numbers, the net is still the only real option. But this study moves the goalposts significantly. We used to think the tipping point was 3 or 4 tumors. Now we know it is somewhere above 20.
That is a huge expansion of territory for precision medicine.
It really is. It gives the radiation oncologist the permission, the actual data-backed permission to say, I can handle this with the sniper, even when the MRI scan looks incredibly crowded.
There was one other safety point I wanted to check from the sources. We talked about fatigue being the main issue. What about seizures or radionecrosis, where the brain tissue actually dies from the radiation? Was that higher with the sniper? Because you were using a much higher concentrated dose of radiation, right?
That is the classic risk of the sniper approach. Radionecrosis, dead tissue caused by intense radiation. But in this trial, the rates of severe adverse events, grade 3 or higher, were basically identical between the two arms. It was 12% for the sniper group and 13% for the whole brain group.
So there was no extra danger at all.
No significant safety signal that would scare a doctor away from using the sniper approach on 20 tumors. It held up remarkably well.
This really feels like a moment in medicine where less is truly more.
I think it's a moment where smart is more. It is recognizing that the brain is not just a biological container for tumors. It is the person. The whole brain approach treats the container. The sniper approach treats the invader while actually respecting the person.
That distinction right there, treating the container versus treating the invader, that is incredibly powerful.
And it perfectly aligns with where oncology is going in general. We are moving away from an era of maximum tolerated toxicity toward an era of maximum precision.
So if you are listening to this and you are a patient or a family member of a patient, and the doctor says, hey, there are 12 spots, we need to do whole brain radiation right away.
Yeah.
This study is basically your ammunition to ask a question.
Absolutely. It is the hard evidence you need to pause and ask, why can't we target them individually? The data says I might actually feel better and function better if we do.
And to be clear, this wasn't some small, 10-person pilot study. This was a rigorous phase 3 trial.
The absolute gold standard. Published, peer-reviewed, multi-center. It is as solid as it gets in medical research.
I want to circle back to something we touched on just a minute ago, the idea of distant brain failure. The anxiety that if you don't treat the whole brain failure, new tumors are definitely going to appear.
Right.
The studies show that did happen more frequently with the sniper group. Doesn't that create a huge amount of anxiety for the patient, just knowing there are microscopic seeds left behind?
There is definitely a very real psychological component to this. For some patients, the anxiety of what's hiding in there is intense. But what this study brilliantly suggests is that the physical toll of trying to prevent that anxiety by radiating the whole brain is actually worse for your daily functioning than the disease itself.
So we are managing the disease as it happens rather than trying to preempt it at this massive physiological cost.
Exactly. It's the difference between fire prevention and firefighting. Whole brain radiation is soaking the entire forest in water to prevent a fire from starting. Sniper radiation is just waiting for a spark and putting it out immediately. If another spark happens 3 months later, you put that out too. The forest stays much drier and healthier overall in the second scenario.
And the water in this analogy causes profound fatigue and cognitive slowing.
Exactly right.
Before we wrap this up, I'm thinking about the future. If we can target 20 tumors now with this precision, will we be targeting 50 in 5 years? Will whole brain radiation eventually just become a museum piece?
I really think we are heading exactly there. As artificial intelligence improves, we will be able to spot these tumors earlier and when they are much smaller. We already have AI tools right now that help doctors instantly outline the tumors on the MRI. If we catch them when they are just tiny dust specks and we can zap 50 of them in 10 minutes, why would we ever bathe the whole brain in radiation again?
It feels archaic, like using a cannon to kill a mosquito in your living room.
It does. And I genuinely think 20 years from now, we will look back at whole brain radiation, even the fancy hippocampal avoidance kind, as a crude tool from a bygone era. It was a necessary tool for its time, but it's one we are rapidly outgrowing.
The era of the sniper is definitely here.
It certainly seems that way. And for the patient, that directly translates to more time feeling like themselves, which is everything.
Well, this has been a heavy topic, but oddly hopeful. It is incredibly good to know that the focus in research is shifting to making sure the days these patients have left are actually good days.
That really is the ultimate goal of modern medicine. It's not just about extending life on a calendar, but preserving the actual quality of that life.
A massive thank you to the researchers who ran this trial from 2017 all the way to 2024. That is a long haul to get these vital answers.
It is. Science takes time, but as we've seen today, the answers are incredibly worth it.
This leaves me with a final thought for everyone listening. If we can successfully treat 20 individual tumors with precision radiation and get better quality of life outcomes than treating the whole organ, does this suggest that the future of all cancer care is moving entirely away from preventative blanket treatment toward reactive precision management? I mean, at what point does whole organ radiation become a thing of the past completely? Something to think about. Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We will be back with another stack of research soon. Until then, stay curious.
Take care, everyone.